Hey, what's up, everyone? Jovanni Casaus here with All About Your Mindset podcast, bringing you episode number 5 on beliefs. Let's do this. Welcome to All About Your Mindset podcast, where it's all about discovering your greater potential and creating the life you want through the way you think. And now, your guide, Jovanni Casaus. Hello, friends, family, journeymen. Welcome back to another great episode of All About Your Mindset podcast. Today, we truly have an amazing episode for you on beliefs. Beliefs are really what structure our life, whether it's positive or negative, empowering, limiting, our beliefs are at the core of it. Today's guest is Michelle Masters. She's been practicing neuro-linguistics programming, or NLP, for the last 20 years. Now, I want you guys to really listen to what Michelle says because she gives us a lot of great insights on where our beliefs come from and how we can start recognizing them and what we can do to start removing them. Now, she recommends having a professional help you do it, but there are some things we can do to start recognizing our limiting beliefs now. So pay attention, and without further ado, here's Michelle. Welcome, everybody, to All About Your Mindset podcast. I am super excited to have Michelle Masters on the show. Michelle, welcome, and thank you.
Thank you, Jovanni.
So today's topic is I'm really excited about. It's about beliefs. Whether we want to do empowering and limiting, more likely probably going to focus on limiting just because I think most of us have limiting beliefs that we're not aware of if we're not reaching the goals or the life that we want. It's probably because of limiting belief. Would you agree? Or
Oh, absolutely.
Perfect.
I would say pretty much everything we experience in life, the good and the bad, is a outpicturing of our belief structure. Most of its structure we're not even aware is there.
And we're going to get to that. And as always, I would like to ask you, how do you start your morning to get you in the best mindset for the day?
It's pretty simple, actually. Typically, some silly music or cheerful music, an espresso, and maybe one little card game, and then I'm good to go. For me, it's more important to start the day happy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because it all flows from there. So those are all things that make me happy.
Okay, perfect. I like it. And Michelle, you are a neurolinguistics programming trainer. Can you tell us a little bit about neurolinguistics programming in general, but then also how you became a trainer and why you became a trainer and why you help people do what you do?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, if you Google neurolinguistic programming, which is shorthand is NLP, you'll find some scary stuff out there because there's been a lot of misapplication of some really wonderful tools. And so in some circles, it got a bad reputation for a while. But actually, the best coaches and teachers in the world right now are using it. They'll call it neuroscience.
Okay.
To get it away from the bad reputation that some NLP gave it, they talk about neuroscience. And so this is what NLP is based in. It's a set of tools to help both get clear on what people want and also to start to change the patterning that's keeping them from having what they want. Because most people have tried willpower, but it's the first place people go, willpower. They try to effort through it. This almost never works.
Yeah.
And so, because it's a little like that spot on your knee that the doctor hits with a little mallet, and you have a reflex response, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All the willpower in the world is not going to help you when he or she, the doctor, hits that spot with a hammer if they do it right, because it's a reflex. And so, when people try to willpower through these unconscious patterns, it's like trying to override a reflex. So it never works, at least not for very long. So NLP is tools for communication and change, and I've been doing it for over 20 years now. Wow. And before that, I really was kind of wandering in the wilderness. I mean, I taught environmental education in Maine. I lived in London. I lived in New York. I watered plants. I painted scenery off Broadway. I did a bunch of different things, painted houses, because I really hadn't found what I wanted to do. And then one day somebody said, you should go to this free workshop. Well, I'm always up for learning something. So I went, and within a half hour, I knew this is what I wanted to do.
Wow.
I was so impressed by even just with the little kind of parlor tricks that they were using in the free seminar. I could feel things actually shift. Now, I'd done a lot of therapy, and I appreciated it. The woman who worked with me was an absolute angel, and I got so much out of it, so much acceptance, so much self-understanding and awareness, but things didn't change. So in this little demo, in that 15 minutes, when I actually felt something be different, I thought, okay, now that's something that I really want to do. Because I had briefly considered a career in counseling, but just listening to how bad things were for people, not being able to do anything about it, was just more than I could take. But here was a way that I could actually change things.
Yeah.
And at the time that I came to the free seminar, I was in the middle of really completely crashing and burning my life. It kind of slow motion, but it was already underway. And so about a couple months into the training, my relationship blew up. I didn't have a place to live. I'd blown through all my money. And it was perfect timing because as a part of the training, you work on stuff. And I also went to see the trainer, Carl Buchheit, for private sessions and got a bunch of very fundamental, huge stuff shifted in that first year. And so my life, you can pretty much notice there's such a difference of before I came and since I came to do this work.
Wow.
So
nice.
That's the short version.
That's short. that's perfect. And I like that you went for it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm starting with NLP myself. As we talked, I'm in the program starting this month, end of March. It's you want to be able to help people, right? And I know like all therapies work, and just the time frame it takes, right, of going through it. And for me, I'm just like, why wouldn't you want to help somebody the fastest you could to get their life to change? Who wants to spend 5 years in a therapist room just not really progressing, right? Like let's take care of it now. So I'm excited because this is this is episode 4. Correction, this is episode 5 of my podcast series here. And beliefs are huge. Just like you had mentioned in the beginning, it's pretty much our whole life, creates our whole life and the structure of it. So can you go over with us what beliefs are, how they're formed and whatnot?
So often people think of beliefs as something they are consciously doing. I believe in freedom, or I believe in greater America, whatever. Actually, most of our beliefs are not conscious. So what happens is when we're incredibly young, because most of the things that we believe about ourselves and the world are in place by age 3, and pretty much all of it by 6.
Okay.
Our core beliefs are in place by age 6. And so how it happens is, and this can start even in utero, there's very simple neurology in place, but when a child has an experience, it makes an association. Now, it doesn't matter whether or not the experience is about the child. The child still makes an association. So if a parent yells at a kid, "You're stupid," especially in those first few years, there's a really bad feeling, there's an association that gets made, and that association becomes a belief. It becomes automated. And the nature of the belief depends on how old the kid is when things are difficult. Now, for most kids, it's not even something that has to be directed at them. If a kid is born into a family and the family is in tension or stress, the child will make a fairly simple equation. Things feel bad and I'm here. Those two things must be related.
Oh, wow.
Because they personalize everything. So very few of us make it with a sense that the world is okay and we are okay. Completely. There's layers. Some of us have experiences that things are okay, and then mixed in with that, there are experiences of, oh, maybe things aren't okay. Maybe I'm not okay. And so these associations become automated, like I said. These tracks get laid down. And then after the first few years, those are the foundation of our experience of ourselves and the world. So I could ask you, or anybody who's listening, kind of finish any of these sentences. To make money, you have to
Work hard.
Okay, most common one I ever hear. By the way, absolutely not true at all.
Oh, thank you.
By the way, there are so many people working their buns off who are not making money, and there are people making money who frankly aren't working that hard.
Yeah.
But really common belief.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, to be loved, you have to
be happy was the first thing that came to mind. That's
okay.
rude.
And be happy with the person that you want to love you, or
I don't know. I just said be happy. To be loved. Maybe you have to make the person happy or something. I don't know.
Okay, because there are people working their buns off making other people happy who don't feel loved, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll give a couple. You don't have to answer in case it feels too personal, but anything that you answer is a function of belief structure.
Yeah.
The world is.
Yeah.
Right? People are.
Mm-hmm.
Money is.
That was an interesting one.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could go on and on, but all of us have literally thousands of these running that we don't even realize are there. They're just kind of the way things are.
Yeah.
So that's an unconscious core belief structure. And those actually act as a filter. There's a part of our brain called I won't go a lot into it. If you want to hear more, I have a YouTube video called Beliefs and the RAS, the Reticular Activating System.
Okay.
The reticular activating system is a part of your brain that is designed to look for what it's already looking for and filter out everything else. Mm-hmm. So the example I use all the time, because most people have had this, is if you're thinking about getting a new car, and then you decide, you know what, I think I'd like a red Jeep. Mm-hmm. Overnight, the parking lots and highways and roads of your town fill up with those cars. Yep. They're everywhere all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
Now, they were there, the same amount were there before, but your system literally screened them out. And it's not, pregnant women tell me the same thing, that the world is filled with pregnant women. Like, I never see them. And so this happens on an actual visceral level where we will not see the things that do not conform to our belief structure, and we will only see the things that confirm it. So when you actually change the belief structure, the world literally looks and behaves differently. Wow. Because different experiences are being filtered out and different experiences are being let in. So it's not uncommon. I did a session with someone once around relationship, and she emailed me the next day and said, what the hell? All the men in the world are behaving differently to me today.
Oh.
Because the belief structure had changed, right?
Yeah.
She wasn't doing anything differently as far as she could tell, but the whole world was responding to her differently. So at least the male half.
Wow. That's so so that brings something up is, all right, first off, how do we see a limiting belief, or how do we see a belief that's hurting us? Is there an easy way to do it by just asking questions, or?
Well, the ones that are most in our way are usually completely invisible to us. Oh. That's just how life is. So actually, if you wanted to get a list of some of your biggest limiting beliefs, I would say take out a piece of paper and write your biggest complaints about yourself and life.
Okay.
Your biggest complaints are every single one of those, or people, or the world, every single one of those is going to be a limiting belief.
And so then how do we start, if you can answer this, like how do we start removing them, or how do we start paying more attention to them to change that life or the belief?
Right. And it's the question I get asked all the time, and I really wish that I had an easy way for people to go revise their beliefs. And until fairly recently, there wasn't even a complicated way to revise some of these beliefs. Basically, people got their beliefs revised when they died, sort of how it happened before now. Every so often, someone would spontaneously have an epiphany. Mm-hmm. But those are relatively rare. So to revise a belief is a lot like revising software, because our beliefs are a lot like our mental software. So to revise software, you have to know the language it's written in. You have to know the code.
Okay.
The human brain actually operates much the same way. And the code that our human software is written in is pictures, sounds, feelings, smells, and tastes, believe it or not.
Okay.
So any experience that you have is a combination of either in your mind or through your actual senses, picture, sounds, feelings, smells, and taste. So if you read a book or watch a movie and you have an emotional response, if it's a movie, you're responding to the images and the sounds you're seeing on the screen. Mm-hmm. If you're reading a book, you're responding to the images and sounds that you make up in your head as you translate the words on the page.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay? So when someone says to us something and we feel hurt, let's say, someone says a remark and we feel hurt, what actually causes the hurt is the pictures and sounds and meanings that we make out of their words, for instance. Okay? So this is how the software is written. Now, to change software, it really does no good to try and hold the software accountable. Yeah. You can't say to the software, you need to be better. You can't yell at it. I've tried. I've really tried. You can't yell at the computer. Eventually, some people get so angry they will pull the plug on the computer, which is often how some people try to get out of their negative beliefs. They try and pull the plug on themselves. But the amazing thing about at least the branch of NLP that I had the good fortune or luck or belief structure to happen on, NLP Marin, we focus on the physiology that shows us exactly what the unconscious or conscious pictures, sounds, feelings, smells, and tastes are that are the patterning. Because to revise a belief, if someone's 35 and they're having an unpleasant interaction, it's a result of patterning that's been there for a very long time. Mm-hmm. We don't, especially if it's a recurring experience, it's a result of patterning that's been there probably since they were 6 or younger, right? If you can find out the original associations, the original picture, sounds, feelings, smells, and tastes that are still running, and revise those, then their experience literally changes. They don't have to remember it. They don't have to, if you do it right, they don't have to remember to be different. They don't have to practice. They don't have to rehearse. It's just different. Yeah. This is a thing that people who are used to traditional therapy, when they do this kind of work, at the end they're just stunned at how different they feel permanently. Because it's like software. When you rewrite software, the software stays rewritten. It just runs a different pattern. So this is what my life's work has been through both teaching other people and working with clients, is finding out what the structure is of the beliefs that are in their way, of the patterning, and then revising it so they can have what they want. And we get a lot of credit for being magicians or miracle workers, but when you know the structure of the magic, it's actually it is an art form, but it is achievable.
And this works for most everybody. I mean, I'm wondering, is there problem people out there who you do this process through and it just doesn't take, or is it just finding that root issue and making sure you actually do it, like you said, properly to get rid of it?
Well, the first thing is, one of the things I've noticed in all the years I've been doing this is the more change someone needs, the less they can tolerate.
Interesting.
So people who are in a whole lot of distress, they're barely hanging on. You don't want to go in and change a bunch of stuff. So for people who are mentally, clinically ill, we wouldn't do this.
Okay.
So someone is schizophrenic, this is not a good tool. Well, I was away on vacation, and while I was on vacation, I had one of those middle of the night epiphanies, and as happens after those, there's often fallout. When you go through a big change, often there's so then I got sick, which was kind of not surprising. So, but I could feel it when it happened. It's like, oh, things are going to be different now, and I'm curious to see how it's playing out. So
would you say your body's like is it kind of expelling that stuff, being sick?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's that, or that may be physically it's actually changing its structure. The other possibility, and it might be both, is that, you know how it's easier to remodel a building when the tenants aren't in it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think our system kind of takes us down a little bit so that it can do some major remodeling inside without being bothered so much by the tenants banging around. Yeah. So I don't know, but I do. After having been through this for 20 years with myself and others, when a big change comes, it's not uncommon for people to get a cold or get sick. So, but before I digressed on that. Yes. So if people are mentally ill, we wouldn't use this. The other thing is, sorry about that. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. There are two main reasons that people get stuck. The first is what I said, those unconscious belief structures. Mm-hmm. The other one is unconscious family loyalties. The ways that people injure, limit themselves, or hold themselves back so as to not have it better than the people they come from. Mm. These are way outside of our conscious awareness. Now, when it's one of those are much harder to shift, because the driver behind those is love and loyalty. It's easier if someone has a trauma when they're 2 years old. That is so much easier to revise and make and give them the experience they want than if they're screwing their life into the ground because their father was an alcoholic.
Interesting. Yeah.
So those when things won't shift, it's usually because there's one of those unconscious family loyalties running. That we have other ways of working with those, but those are the hardest things to shift, because you never know when somebody's going to be willing, or if they're going to be willing, to give up on proving their love and loyalty through suffering.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm always up putting myself on the chopping block here. So for me, my dad passed away when I was 4 years old, and I believe you know Steve Napolitano. He's my business coach, and we've gone through a few things. And for me, once again, I'm totally transparent, because I mean, it is what it is, right? Life is,
right.
So for me, financial has always been a trouble for me, and we did my very first time we did a session. I was actually with like 3 other people around, and I was like kind of going in for business stuff. I'm like, okay, I want to learn something about marketing or whatever it may be. And then we started doing the process, and he was asking me like what I want. And eventually we got down to it, that I had this image of my mom crying on a bed when my dad passed away. And I was on the standing by her bedside, and she was crying, and I was like asking her like what was wrong, and then she told me my dad passed away, but I don't have any recollection of that. I thought it was like maybe made up or something like that. So then afterwards, after Steve told me to maybe take a day or two to let it settle, and then I called my mom and asked her, I'm like, hey, like I just did this thing, I had this memory, is it real? And she's like yeah. And for me, I struggle with memories. Like I can't just say. My mom will always go like, "Hey, do you remember when you was this? Like when you were this old and you did this?" I'm like, I have no clue. I'm like, she's like, "You had such a good childhood." I'm like, I don't remember that stuff. And my memories are triggered by either somebody saying something, or usually smells are a big trigger for me on a memory. But would something like that, is that an easy, like a quote unquote easier way to help somebody get through something, or is that one of those what was it called, the love and like loyalty and suffering?
Well, it's hard to say. I will I have a class called Money Magic, which is all change work focused on money, and one of the things that I often tell people in that is usually money stuff is dad stuff.
Interesting.
There's some stuff with dad, and I hope this doesn't sound, I'm not sure how this sounds, but I will tell you that for a kid who loses his father at 4, that's not a good childhood. It doesn't matter how loving the people are. It doesn't matter how fun the people are. That loss is so huge and so primal that it will overshadow an enormous chunk of what's there.
Interesting.
Especially for a boy, his father is his roadmap to how to be a man in the world. And so, not to take away anything from what your mother did or what anybody else gave you, but for a kid in that situation, the less they can remember, the better.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. as the way to cope with stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
because the loss is so huge, there's no way they can cope with that consciously. So what they do is they relegate it to the unconscious and try to not go there. It's a life-saving response.
Yeah, that's what I honestly I've figured, because I've always been interested in like psychology and all this stuff, and reading more and more about it. That's kind of the conclusion I was hoping, like not hoping, but you know what I mean. Like I'm not crazy, because everybody else like has these great memories. You know, I'm like wow, man, I wish I had this great memory, but at the same time, like it's a big event in a child's life, and for me, it makes sense that I would block out stuff just because it was horrible. So, yeah. That's great. and that's on it. And honestly, like I'm okay. Like I'm okay where I'm at, and obviously, I want to get rid of this stuff from the past. And I've always what are the words I'm trying to look for here? I've always wanted to get like help for it, like to talk about it, to have that, because even now I can kind of feel it like mustering up, just like what you had said, and so I'm excited to start this NLP to get rid of it and be okay with those memories and hopefully retrieve the memories, because it's like because I know my family was loving, and my mom was always there. My aunt and my uncle, they stepped up. On my dad's side, my dad's sister, they stepped up to take me into my dad's side of the family, but a lot of those memories are absent, you know, and I'd love to have that ability to see those and retrieve them.
And one of the things that I've had clients say to me over the years, and our students as well, is that after they get a big chunk of the stuff that's painful revised, they spontaneously start having good memories that they'd forgotten about show up.
Nice.
It's like once the painful stuff isn't taking up all the bandwidth, then there's a lot more room for that other stuff to show up.
Excellent. I'm ready for it.
Yeah. And you asked me, like, I think you asked me, could this be what's in the way? And one of the beautiful things about this brand of work is I don't have to be able to be perceptive and clever. I could ask you, like, what it is that you want. And I could say, so Jovanni, what you want is this, yeah? And you'd say, yeah. And I'd say, great, what stops you? Now, you might try and answer the question. The answer you would come up with would be useless. But your physiology, in the moment that I would ask you, what stops you, there would be changes in skin color and breathing. To answer the question, you'd look somewhere. You know how people look someplace when they're thinking? This would give me all the information I would need as to what's in the way. Rather than me trying to have a theory, I can just watch your body answer the question, and we can go to where and when the thing that's in the way got started and revise it right there at the source, and then it's different. Now, for some people, it's layers. It's not just one thing. It's kind of layers that you do before they're able to have what they want. And for other people, you find that thing and you change it, and it's done. It's different.
Okay. Yeah. So then I guess that's what I went off on the tangent. That was the memories, the visualizations. So it just depends on the person, right? What the level of visualization is seeing what's stopping. And once you found that trigger, correct? So like for me, when Steve was doing stuff, it was hard to visualize or see anything. Sometimes it was just grayness. And
right. And the longer you do this, the more ways you have of being able to help somebody get access. It's always there. It's always there. And my friend and colleague Carl Buchheit, who's the founder of the place where I teach, he would often say something like this. He'd say, "So Jovanni, right now, are you in an apartment or a house?"
Apartment.
Are there ninjas crouching on the roof of your apartment?
I hope not. No.
No. Okay. Now, to answer me too, you just made a picture. So you visualize just fine. Like your brain works just fine. It's just that a lot of the things that we have stored are stored in kind of degraded, low image quality, and they are designed to be unconscious. Because if you had to be conscious of all your unconscious patterning, it would take you 4 hours just to get out of bed.
Oh, wow.
So most of our learning is designed to be unconscious. If you remember how when you were learning how to drive, it took like all your attention just to like, pedal and wheel,
Yeah.
right? Whereas
Yeah.
now we can text, we can drink, we can play with the radio,
Yeah, we do
right?
all of it.
It's because all the learning is automated. So learning is best when it's automated. It's just that a lot of the stuff that we learned early on are decisions about us and the world that are now automated and now starting to cause problems.
Okay. Nice. So I kind of want to go this, like I had mentioned earlier before we started our conversation, was I did a little research and I wanted to see how well it came, what other people are saying with, what you think and whatnot. So I read somewhere that there's 5 ways of gathering information, and you kind of just went over it, with the auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, what is the other ones?
Gustatory, so visual, auditory, kinesthetic, which is touch, tactile touch and feelings, olfactory and gustatory, smell and taste.
So then that's... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and so those are the ones that you have, and that's one I'm familiar with too as well. But what I read here was they said there's 5 reasons we believe something or ways we gather information, and it says evidence-based, tradition, so like probably family, authority, association, and revelation.
Okay.
Does any of that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I didn't have those distinctions previously, but I wouldn't argue with them.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm just curious to see what it,
I would say almost all of those boil down to association, though.
Association.
Yeah. Okay. If it's the family, if it's just how it is in the family or the culture, that's an association. Okay. Right? Yeah. If it's somebody who is in authority who's saying something, that creates an association. Mm-hmm. So they almost all boil down to associations on one level or another. Oh, nice. And those are the associations that become beliefs.
Okay. And then going back to you said core beliefs are pretty much set by 6 years old. Are we still creating beliefs after that? Are they just minimal, or it all just comes back to that?
It pretty much comes back to that. We can, unless there's a near-death trauma. Okay. The system is designed to be operational pretty much by then. So, and there are windows. For example, we're learning about our competencies, our capabilities. The window for that is the biggest window is between 3 and 5 years old. This is when kids are making big decisions about their capability level, and also big decisions about control are made during those years between 3 and 5. Wow. And so there's other kinds of beliefs that are made in other windows, and then these are developmental windows. And then once that window closes, the learning on that is pretty much sealed off, unless you know how to get back into that window. And there are ways of doing it. That's part of how we're able to create such change, is by finding out when those decisions were made and what developmental window, accessing that part of the brain that was developing then and revising it there. Instead of trying to talk to the 40-year-old about what happened at 4, if you find out what the 4-year-old was experiencing, what associations they were making, and revise those as they're having, like take those experiences into the experience of the 4-year-old. It's not inner child work. It's a very specific way of working, but it actually revises that patterning permanently.
Wow. Okay.
It breaks up something called encapsulation.
Encapsulation?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
It'd be easier if I could show you a picture, but if you do a brain scan on someone who's having a normal day, it's like flying over LA at night. It's like all lit up, like, electrons firing all over the place. If a person has had, say, a trauma when they're 2, let's say dad comes home drunk and violent, okay? That creates a learning, and that learning gets encapsulated. So it's almost like this little area is almost walled off. Almost like it's got a little encapsulation around it. Now, if that 40-year-old, that person continues to grow, their brain continues to grow, if at 40, that 40-year-old encounters a situation that's similar, for instance, their boss comes in like drunk or angry, or unstable and angry, what happens is right before that event, if you did the brain scan, you'd see their brain all lit up and firing and, like LA at night. But once they encounter that situation that's similar, you can watch almost all of the brain go dark except for that one area that was developed at the age where the original event happened. It's got to be similar in structure. It's called isomorphic structure. So this is how, and you've probably had this experience, when we encounter something, suddenly all of a sudden someone who was formerly feeling like they're normal adult, all of a sudden they feel like a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
It's like hard to talk, or they feel scared, or they feel like disproportionately stuck, right? That's an encapsulation that got fired off. And so when you can find out what that original encapsulation was, there are ways of using neuroassociation to connect that part of them, that encapsulated part of them, with the more fully developed adult self. It's called anchoring. It literally creates neural pathways in and out of that encapsulated area. And after that, if they encounter a similar situation, then they don't get stuck or not for as long, or it's much easier for them to get out of it, because there's literally now neural pathways in and out of that formerly encapsulated area.
Oh, that makes that makes sense. Like that's actually happened to me about, I think last year was one that comes to mind. Where I was doing a shoot for somebody else, an out-of-state photographer, and always just nervous just because it's somebody else's stuff and it falls on me. If it's my own stuff, like I take full responsibility either way. But the shoot wasn't going right. My lens that I have just isn't that good of a lens, and one of the guys, the artistic director, I guess if you call him, was there, and like he kind of took me to the side, and like I felt like I was getting scolded like as a kid, and like I kind of shut down. I was like, I felt like I was a little kid being like disciplined, and I was like, there was a lot of emotions coming. I'm like, what the heck, man? I'm 30. I'm like 32 years old.
Right. Yeah. Encapsulation. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. It's just funny when you start learning more about what's going on in your own head and your own body.
Yes.
I'm just glad I can just laugh at it. I think it's funny now.
Yeah. Same thing. If you're in your car, and I know this is when it fires off, and somebody like cuts you off and you hit this rage place, that is also going to be some kind of experience of being thwarted earlier on, because it's a disproportionate. I mean, I know when I have it when I'm driving, it's a disproportionate reaction to what happened. Yeah. Somebody maybe shaved a quarter of a second off my commute time, maybe.
Yeah.
And there's not, right? But the amount of rage, that's an encapsulation. That's hitting some previous patterning that gets triggered. And then it all gets aimed at, the person in the BMW. I'm going to say BMW because why not? Because those people can take
BMW drivers. No, absolutely. So I guess kind of comes to another question then is, so I was reading some articles, like I said before our conversation here, and some of them were like, 20 minutes to remove limiting beliefs, like just by reading their article and doing some things like that. Is it possible for somebody to clear their own belief or limiting belief?
Well, as somebody who's been doing this for over 20 years, when I have stuff up, I usually go to somebody else. And the reason is, you can do processes on yourself. I mean, I have an online version of Money Magic that's all around revising beliefs. And if I'm in a pinch and I don't have time to get a session, I'll sometimes put on the recording of some of the change pieces and let myself take myself through it, right? Mm-hmm. But the caveat is, you will be blind to your own blind spots. Yeah. So, for instance, the for instance just flew right out of my head. But so a lot of the actual changing of the belief part when I'm working with someone, that part might only take 10 to 20 minutes. But there's an hour and a half before that of finding out what they want, what they're experiencing, and what the ecology is like, how changing this thing could affect the rest of their lives, and why this thing has stayed stuck. Like, there's often some reasons behind something being stuck for so long. So to do change elegantly, it's really useful to be able to have a sense of how this is part of the person's whole life and how to change it so that their whole life doesn't have to fall apart for them to have the change they want.
Yeah.
So I did a belief change on myself once and I didn't notice the nature of the problems. If you didn't change the belief just right, you could set yourself up for a problem. I was working on weight, and I discovered I had this belief that if I lost weight, I could be moved. Now, I got the real sense. It went back to when I was 3. Things were chaotic. There was 4 different apartments, 3 different kindergartens, 2 different states. There was a ton of moving, and it was a divorce, a remarriage. It was really a stressful period. And apparently, my 3-year-old self decided, well, if they can't physically move me, maybe all this will stop, right? Okay. Now, I wasn't like an obese child or anything, but that belief was in there, and I didn't pay attention because it was me. If it had been somebody else, I may have paid more attention. I did some change work. I started to lose weight, and like clockwork, my landlord came up and said, "I'm afraid you're going to have to move," because I hadn't changed that part of the belief. I hadn't kind of deconstructed that association of if they can move me. So I ended up having to move out of an apartment I loved, right? Yeah. Now, if it had been anybody else, I would have been paying a whole lot of attention to that. But we tend to be a little bit blind to our own blind spots. So, yes, you can. You can do it yourself. And if it's something that really matters, it's often good to have somebody on the outside who can be watching out for those kind of things. And not only that, but we often tend to ask for way less than we actually want. We often tend to ask for what we think we need to do in order to have the thing we want, rather than having actually the thing we want.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples of what you kind of run in on a daily, weekly, monthly basis with people's like beliefs?
Mm-hmm. Not good enough is huge. That shows up all the time. Now, the interesting thing are not deserving, not worthy. Now, people's decisions about their worth are in place by age 3.
Okay, interesting.
So people have decided how worthy and deserving they are by 3. Now, you find me a 3-year-old who's not worthy and deserving of a good life.
Yeah.
Right? But they have made decisions, and very few of us have a real sense of our worth and deserving. And so this is one that I find over and over and over again, not worthy, not deserving. And so what follows from that is a whole lot of hoops we think we have to jump through in order to become worthy. We have to work hard. We have to sacrifice. We have to sacrifice for others. All these things that we think we have to do to prove or become worthy and deserving.
Yeah.
That's a huge one. And that having to work hard and struggle thing comes usually right out of there.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the biggest ones I find is that worth and deserving piece.
I've definitely had those. I mean, the worthiness and then the other one as well. And it's interesting because I think it does kind of stem because when we did, Steve and I did another session about something else, that same image kind of came back from before. And I think it was dealing with... I think it was something about worthiness, or it could have been back financials again. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when there's a traumatic event like that, like a parent dying, what will happen is a kid in that circumstance will spin off like sometimes 100 different beliefs in an instant. There will be they're not sitting there thinking, oh, I this means this, but there will be like 100 different associations. Oh, life is not predictable. Life is not safe. Kids will always make it personal. If I were good enough, he wouldn't have left. If I were good enough, I could have saved him. I mean, there'll just be like an explosion of those on an unconscious level, and then those become part of the fabric of who you are.
Interesting. I really can't wait for this program to start. just unleash everything and see what comes out. I'm actually excited about it. So I wonder, could that be a belief that like I'm so willing to just put myself on the chopping block? Because you know how like a lot of people when you're in a group and somebody asks somebody to participate and nobody wants to do it, right? And I'll be like I'll stand back, and if nobody raises their hands, I'll eventually be like, all right, well, if nobody else will do it, I guess I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to be part of your makeup, part of your belief structure, and also part of, I do think there are certain things we bring in with us.
Okay.
Because no two people in exactly the same situation respond in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's no way to prove this, but I don't think life begins at conception, and I don't think it ends at death. You don't have to believe that for this to work, but it does seem like people come in with something. And I've even heard it said generationally, like one of the midwives I was talking to was saying that kids are coming in different now. They're just coming in at a different level than where they were before. Yeah, it's almost a generational thing of so much of what previous generations worked to establish are now presupposed by the generation coming in, and their challenges are going to be a whole new set of challenges. Yeah. And as a human race, we're right now dealing with the challenge of unprecedented choice.
Yeah.
It was not that long ago that you didn't get to, technically, in theory, you didn't get to decide where you lived, what you did for a living, and who you married. Those decisions were all made, right? And now, and then it kind of got to the point where you could pick a job, but you had to pick it and for the rest of your life, and you started at 22 and you stayed there till you retired. Yeah. This is a very different world now, where the amount of choice of where we live, who we're with, what kind of work we do, how long we do it for, it has expanded at a rate that the human race is really catching up with.
Yeah. I mean, we still have our reptilian membrane, our brain, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, trying to cope with an explosion of choice and possibility, which it's not necessarily what it was designed for.
Yeah.
Right? So it's an interesting interplay between these human parts of us that are expanding at an exponential rate and this ancient reptilian wiring that basically wants to be safe and copulate and eat.
Yeah.
And not have things change. Reptile brain hates change.
Yeah.
Human brain loves change.
And it's that little one that seems to take control of everybody.
Yes, well, because it has your survival at, that's its job, is to keep you safe. It has seniority.
Yeah, okay.
So, interesting interplay.
And so, I guess for the beliefs, the beliefs that we have, they're meant to protect us, right? I mean, that's at least the concept behind it is to protect us from future pain or anguish or whatever it may be, correct? Or
yeah, so because the human neurology takes so long to fire up, the parts that we think of ourselves as humans, say the cerebral cortex, the parts we're so proud of as human beings and like to lord over the rest of the animal kingdom, those are what do things like abstract thought and meaning and creativity and time. You'll never see an antelope with a day planner. Yeah. Those parts of the human brain are not developed until at least 25. In men, it's actually closer to 30.
Nice, man. I'm just barely getting developed. I love it.
Yes. Actually, I was in Sedona on a Jeep tour, and the guide there told us that 90% of the rescues they have to do are men 30 and under. And then he said, also, 90% of the snake bites they have to treat are men 30 and under. And he said, of those 90%, 95% of them are bites on the hand or face. Which gives you an idea of what was going on right before the snake bit somebody. So the guides have this joke that what's the first words of English a snake learns? And it's, dude, hold my beer. So that higher level functioning is not fully developed until like 25 to 30. And the beliefs about ourselves are in place so much earlier. So there's not much executive function going on when those early decisions about safety and what we're worth and what the world is like, there's very little executive function. So it's almost all in response, associations with what's going on. And then if we don't die, the reptilian neurology thinks those must be good because we're not dead, because that's really all it cares about. It does not care about quality of life. It only cares about quantity of life. The human brain cares about quality of life. The reptilian neurology only cares that you're alive. It doesn't care if you're miserable. It only cares that you're breathing. Yeah. And so if a kid grows up in a difficult situation, let's say a kid grows up getting hit on the head with a hammer every day and they don't die, as far as the reptilian neurology can tell, a daily dose of hammer hitting proven to be survivable. Not getting hit on the head with a hammer, it cannot imagine how that would be better because that part of the brain doesn't imagine. No. And so if that kid leaves the house at 18 and goes a few days without getting hit on the head with a hammer, their human brain is like, eureka, yay! And the reptile brain starts to freak out, and that person will find themselves hanging around hardware stores looking for people with hammers. Oh, man. And if they can't get somebody else to hit them, they'll spend a whole lot of money in therapy explaining why they're hitting themselves in the head. But as soon as they get hit in the head, the reptile neurology is like, okay, now we're good for another 23 hours and 59 minutes. The human goes nuts, joins support groups, journals, blogs about hammer hitting. The reptile neurology just runs its patterning.
Wow.
And because it has seniority, it in a contest between the cortex and the reptilian neurology wins.
Yeah.
It's got literally the best seats in the house neurologically. So the way to create change for people is to understand how to work with that reptilian neurology and make it so that the patterning changes and the person survives and their creature neurology does not notice that something has changed.
So is that what we're changing then? Is the reptilian brain getting in alignment with?
We're not changing the reptilian brain, but we're changing the patterning that it's running.
Okay, the pattern. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah. So can you take us back over a few other things that you see on a daily? So you had talked about worthiness and other things like that.
Let's see. So that's a big one. Safety. People not feeling safe.
Okay.
Another belief that's really common is people thinking that either they can't have what they want or it's selfish for them to pay attention to what they want, and that if they pay attention to what they want, it means they're selfish and unloving, as though to want good things for you means you suddenly lose all care about other people.
Yeah.
And people will often try to prove they're a good and loving person by subjugating their own wants and paying attention to other people's. Now, this causes no end of problems, actually. Yeah. We could write books about the problems that causes, but that's really common. Okay. And the other thing is, it's not uncommon for people to escape into either being a kind of intellectual or spiritual withdrawal. Like it comes with not having a solid right to exist, but in people who are trying to be spiritually good people. Mm-hmm. Rather, I had a dose of this where I thought I wasn't interested in money. I was a spiritual person. I was above that. And this was actually a huge compensation. It was actually not in alignment with spirituality, but it's a really common one of I'm interested in more important things. I'm interested in the welfare of humanity.
Okay, yeah.
Not in something as petty as money. This is actually a predictable compensation if things go wrong or if the environment is either hostile or cold when someone's born. Mm-hmm. Those first 2 months, if things are not ideal, it's not uncommon for people to escape into this sort of idealized spiritual intellectual withdrawal. And it kind of cuts them off from life. They exist rather than as a person, they exist more as a mind.
Okay. Oh.
And so they're not actually living life. They're not actually feeling life and being in life so much as intellectualizing and spiritualizing and about it. That's another common one, actually.
Wow. Just like our conversations, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I've had that thought.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know I did. I had a bunch of work that had to get changed on that, and it was as a function of that money class. They asked me to create a 2-day workshop on money, the money magic class, and I had no relationship with money, but I love designing workshops. And it was the greatest gift because I tried all this stuff out on me as I was designing it. And I had all this stuff there I didn't even know was there. And I look back on it now. And I mean, I could say how arrogant, but actually it was how stuck was I. And so the curious thing is the most spiritual experience in my life has been the unfoldment that's come through this exploration of the money class, of the money magic class. It has, and I'm doing much better financially because I changed that stuff. But it's such a more visceral experience of the beauty of life and people. Came through the place I was least expecting it.
Huh.
But I didn't know I really had those. I didn't even know those were beliefs. I just thought, of course, I was a superior person. Um, until I started kind of getting uncovering the layers there. It was like, oh, wow. Boy, was I stuck.
No. Man. So kind of just to wrap it up here, can you just give us like a closing of how important you believe beliefs are to our daily lives and our standard of living and whatnot?
Well, beliefs are what causes the outpicturing of your life. Everything that you experience and don't experience is a function of your belief structure. Now, if that's working, then that's great. And if there are things that aren't working, then we want you to know that those are revisable now. It's not the case anymore where you just have to kind of take it and muddle through. We're actually at a place now where there are ways of revising that so people can have more and more of the experience they want, and they can create their lives the way we were designed to. We're designed to actually create our lives, not to have just live by default. And finally, we have this, they call it technology, which is a weird thing to call it because it's not like an app, but we have this ability to make clear the decisions and the beliefs that are in the way and revise them now. So it can only get better.
Wow. Nice, thank you. And then do you have 3 action steps we can take, or would you like to reiterate anything, any key points you'd like to leave us with?
The things that are working in your life, great. Let's be so happy for those. And it's really good to notice those. And if there are things that you are routinely frustrated you might start to just, like I said, you can make a list of your biggest complaints about life. Those are beliefs. Okay. And then if you have someone near you who can work with you, or I know like me, there's lots of people that work online. If you have the wherewithal to get some change work done, that's ideal. Even if you don't, though, just knowing that, oh, this is actually a belief, this is not just the way it is, creates a little bit of wiggle room between you and it.
Okay. Nice.
So I would say start there.
Perfect.
And then the last thing you could do, here's the last thing you could do. When you notice one of those things is just that your big complaint about life, you might also take another sheet of paper and write down, what would you like to be true instead?
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah? That would be fantastic.
Excellent. Michelle, thank you so much for your time and knowledge and love, because I felt the love coming this way. Where can we find you? Contact information, website?
Oh, sure. MichelleMastersNLP.com. And it's Michelle with 2 L's. Just like it sounds, MichelleMastersNLP.com. You can find me there and all my contact info.
Thank you so much once again.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Jovanni.
Wow, what a great episode. I hope you guys got as much value out of that as I did, or at least found a way to discover your limiting beliefs. And if you did get great value out of it, please share with those who you think would get the same great value. Like my pappy used to say, sharing is caring. All right, I don't have a pappy, but if I did, he would say that. So please share. And I would like to take this time to thank our sponsor, Photography by Jovanni. They work hard to make you look good. So please check them out at www.photographybyjovanni, J-O-V as in Victor, A-N-N-I.com. Once again, Photography by Jovanni. They're a great sponsor. Thank you once again for listening to All About Your Mindset podcast. You can find us at www.allaboutyourmindset.com.